Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining the Retail Dietitians Business Alliance team with some special guests today to talk about how the C-suite is shifting back to health and well-being priorities. So today we have with us, of course, Phil Lempert, who's the CEO of RDBA. Hi, Phil. How are you?
Good, Annette. How are you?
I'm all good. And then today we're thrilled to have with us two retail dietitians from different parts of the country. So Carrie Taylor from Big Y. Carrie, thanks for joining us today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And we have April Sins joining us from Rouses Market in Louisiana. April, thanks for joining.
Hi, thanks for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. So today, when we had scheduled this webcast, we really wanted to focus on the idea of, obviously, during the pandemic, retailers' priorities shifted to employee safety, sanitation, alignment with federal and state guidelines and protocols and all of those things. And it really took a shift and it obviously impacted many retail dietitian programs across the country. And we wanted to talk with Carrie and April about how are we shifting attention back on health and wellness, right? Because we know that there are core conditions that continue, that are comorbidities, all of those things. So we're going to kick off today with a question about where do you, April and Carrie, see the executive teams at your retailers as far as their focus on the priority of health and well-being?
Well, at Big Y, we have seen the demand for our customers coming in to be able to meet them where they are for convenience. And when that comes to health and wellness with the dietitian team, it's being able to access us virtually. And the demand that's been coming in really speaks for itself when we have presentations to the C-suite where we're giving them a summary of what the demand is coming in through customer asks, what we're seeing for patterns now that we are doing more virtual offerings, whether it's attendance or signups, and the types of topics people are asking for on our social platforms. So that's really helping to keep that on the bullet list, but they're really excited too to see more offerings we can be doing with internal projects that are coming.
So, Carrie, what kind of support are you getting from that C-suite team? Are they saying, okay, these results are great, here's more resources to do more? What's their reaction besides being happy that it's going so well? Are they helping you?
Yeah, they really have. So this past year, we had a little bit of a significant shift on our team where what we do for much of our content and education shifted a little. But what we were seeing as we were kind of piecemealing these virtual nutrition offerings together, the benefit of bringing in an outside vendor for a platform to make it more streamlined, more organized, more user-friendly for the dietitian team, and really more user-friendly in the facing of the customers and really being heard when presenting those numbers and saying we could bring in this company, the software platform. It costs a little bit of money, but it's going to show us so many results, and we can share this with the pharmacy team going forward as well. And so that was the biggest support this year, was them hearing us and saying, yeah, go for it. Let's bring this in, even though we're in the middle of a pandemic and we've kind of shifted how we do the team income generation because we think in the long term this is going to just bring more consumers to us and meet their needs.
And Carrie, that software, is that primarily scheduling? Is it a tool that allows you to more easily kind of do presentations and things like that virtually, or what's the focus of the software?
Yeah, all of the above. So my responsibilities on the team doesn't really play on that platform. My counterpart, Andrea, and our consulting dietitians really utilize it because Andrea was doing a lot of labor in doing the scheduling of the virtual nutrition events, and the consulting dietitians that, are our consultants, so they're at consultant rate, we're spending a lot of time really following up with attendees and really organizing. So the software does all of that. It helps with the scheduling. It helps with the communication to customers for handouts, for follow-up surveys, so we can see how well these nutrition offerings are being received. And it's a really one-stop shop type of platform that logistically just makes everything easier. So labor hours are not being wasted trying to organize all the pieces.
And April, what's going on with your C-suite?
Yes, so actually throughout the pandemic and still, our C-suite's been really thrilled about any new ideas and any ways that we can reach the customers. So as Carrie was saying, digital platforms definitely work well whenever you can't really do the in-store activities as much. So all of those classes about just basic teaching customers basic skills at home, making it family friendly, and like platforms like Zoom, but also Facebook and Instagram, and just kind of meeting people, like Carrie said, where they are and helping them with that health and wellness, I mean, with the, immunity really getting a lot of attention, those supporting ideas and things like that back in the pandemic is still prevalent right now as well. So it's just kind of brought that into more of the limelight as well.
So your number one question that you're being asked by your shoppers has to do with immunity. Carrie, what about you? What's the number one issue for your customers?
So we're finding that families with children really have been stepping up with the virtual nutrition offering. So not only to keep children busy, because of whether it was remote learning or hybrid learning, but also just to keep teaching the family, every member of the family. So we offer such an array of topics. I'm always just dumbfounded when I see what the dietitians come up with, because we do our basic, heart health, diabetes, special allergies, but then we'll do seasonal topics and we'll do fun interactive recipes with just adults and with children. But I definitely have seen that uptick with demands for families with children. And that's something that's a lot different than what we saw in store, because we would see like girl scout troops and organizations like that, but not so many families. And so this has been a definite pivot for us.
So Carrie, one of the interesting things you mentioned was around kind of traditional programs that retail dietitians have been addressing for a long time, like heart disease and diabetes and things like that. And RDBA recently kind of initiated a partnership with the Reagan-Udall Foundation for the FDA, because one of the topics and one of the concerns, right, is that those conditions, those health conditions are all comorbidities as related to COVID-19. And so it's important to maintain that focus on those kinds of conditions. But can you both talk a little bit about, have you had a challenge in getting your executives and your management teams to understand that those are still really important topics? Or do you is it that they really want to take advantage of immunity because it's blipping? Or how are you finding the balance and getting the support you need internally for kind of covering both, or making sure those core foundational health conditions that affect so many Americans and so many of your shoppers are still being addressed?
Oh, I mean, fad diets and trends, they've always been there and they're always going to be there, right? That's just our nature as humans. We want to know about the latest and the greatest things. It really does all go back to those core, taking care of our heart, taking care of, diabetes. And those are things that I think a lot of people can relate to personally, just being in their own family, so I think that those are always going to be really, really important to the customers. And I think in the C-suite area as well, because everybody can relate to it, because it all comes back to health and wellness and taking care of those chronic illnesses as well.
I'd like to go back to a point that Carrie made. April, I don't know if you're seeing more families too, but if I was one of your CEOs and I heard you guys report on that, what would come to my mind is, wow, this is really a great opportunity that we can get the next generation of shoppers at Rouses or Big Y to build a relationship with. That typically, you mentioned the Girl Scout troops and so on, but those are more like store tours and really no relationship. But if I'm taking a course or recipe or whatever with you at Rouses or Big Y with my family. That's a huge branding opportunity to get that next generation in there. Are your C-suite people, your marketing people understanding that and realizing that?
Yeah, at Big Y, we stand the C-suite, the family that owns Big Y, and our board really focuses on our signature offerings. And, Living Well, Eating Smart has been in effect for 16 years. And wonderful thing about the program coming in and really growing it was talking about our customers through the lifespan. And that's always been the dietitian team's focus. And so whenever we've had conversations or presentations, we've always focused on the lifespan. So the last 17, 18 months hasn't really changed that. And the C-suite just sees now like one more step that we've been able to take to really get a little deeper, where traditionally it would be the parents that we were interacting with for cooking, but now seeing like repeat students and repeat families signing up and getting excited, or whether it's the content we're putting on our website, because we're updating our website and offering a health and wellness e-newsletter, really hitting other topics that aren't just adult focused, and getting feedback on that, saying, you know what, all of our customers are our attention, whether they're pregnant, whether they're college age, whether they're 10 years old, we're going to have information for everyone across their lifespan.
I agree too, and it's really important. And I feel that being a part of a family business as well, as at Rouses, that there's a lot of people with kids, in that C-suite area too, so they can totally identify with the importance, and they want their kids to know how to cook and things like that at home. And then of course, whenever I teach classes, always incorporate things that about how my kids like this, or because it's totally relatable to everybody at home. But it's also not just parents, but also grandparents that are maybe taking care of the grandkids while the parents are working, and they're looking for things, ideas to do with the kids during the day or in the evening or on the weekends. Just having that accessibility. And then that brings them into the store to go and get those fun ingredients to make those things at home and make them over and over. So that's the great thing about having some easy, relatable recipes that you can bring those families in to be able to have family time together. And it's so good for the family as well.
So what's the next step? I recall I had worked with ShopRite about 30 years ago on a program called Kids in the Kitchen, which was a recipe contest, if you would, that we used to do in shopping malls. And then we had, the finalists come. It was this whole big deal. We had a Kids in the Kitchen calendar and so on. Do you think that when we're through the pandemic, and hopefully that's sooner than later, that you're going to have more attention on kids than you did pre-pandemic?
I think so. When the dietitian team does their monthly meetings and kind of touching base, like we've already accepted the fact that virtual nutrition offerings are here to stay, and that's going to become a norm, because so much feedback has been told to us in the surveys that people like that more because they can do it from their house. It's more convenient, but also just getting excited to return back to our stores and have the consulting dietitian team be able to do smaller scale on hands, whether it's in a cafe or a breakout room with families with children. Now that they have this experience under their belt, I think it's going to be really exciting to be able to bring families in face to face, but also understand that we're going to continue doing these offerings because the demand is there. It's just really convenient for families to stay at home and just do it in their own home kitchen.
I think the interesting point about it too, Phil, and you and I have talked a little bit about this, but I think because these kids are engaging in activities like you're talking about, Carrie and April, that 15 years from now, we're going to have really good home cooks, right? Because that generation is going to know how to cook because they're doing it with you, they're doing it with their families, they're seeing their parents cook more frequently from home. And I think that's super compelling about the future, is what does that look like for all of us, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I also think, and I hope that what we're going to see is more families shopping together as well. that it's, I remember when I was growing up, my parents would go grocery shopping every Friday night and I would be there with them, and versus, probably the next generation, when I look at Generation Z, Generation X, they're shopping by themselves, leaving the kids at home with one parent or the grandparent or whatever else, because and again, pre-pandemic, because they just want to get in and out of the store as quickly as possible and not have to deal with the kids, wanting the candy and the breakfast cereal and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. A really good, just personal note. So I have a son. He's 8 years old and I am divorced. So we have 50% custody. So last night I called and talked to him and we were building the shopping list together. Just
Cool.
saying like, all right, buddy, I'm going to go to the grocery store before you get here. So we're ready to go. What kinds of meals do you want to have? What are you thinking? And really building that together. That never happened to me as a kid. I was never considered,
No, I wasn't,
let alone planned it.
my parents would drag me with them to the store, but they didn't ask me what I wanted either.
They brought you to push the buggy for them.
Exactly. Or ride on the front of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Carrie, go ahead, April.
I just think that's a great connection, Carrie. Being able to have that family time, even to prepare the list, even if the child's not going to the store, including them in that. And even, a lot of shoppers are going more to that e-commerce side as well, where they're ordering online and going to pick up. And so having that connection too, where they're actually picking those things out, or maybe even looking online with you and and making that order together. Is a really neat thing to see.
Well, April, you bring up a really interesting topic around e-commerce, and I'd love to hear kind of your perspectives on, have you been able to work with your e-commerce teams to integrate health and wellness in some way into e-commerce, and what does that look like at your retailers?
Yeah, at Big Y, we're really excited because part of the pivot this year was creating more content on bigY.com from the dietitian team. So having a lot more to pull from versus writing, we would typically write newspaper columns. So that would go out from someone else's server, but having everything at home at our fingertips. And then as we're rolling out e-commerce, talking about not only adding the nutrition attributes, but also being able to refer shoppers to the content that we have elsewhere. To say, we see you're searching for certain allergy-friendly foods or certain attributes. Here's more information available from our dietitian team. And so that's part of the future of saying, all right, so once we have this platform, how do we feed in the attributes? How do we connect the attributes to the health and wellness offerings already available? So that's a little more holistic than just kind of siloed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we are in the process of working on. And, part of the beauty of that I work for at Rouses is have access to the e-commerce side of, all of that department, along with marketing. And, really when you look at e-commerce, it kind of involves every aspect of the store. And so just really working with the team on that, but that is something that we're working on as well.
Okay.
What about reformulations on your own store brands? Are you both involved in that? Are we going to start to see healthier store brands as a result of this new interest in whether it's immunity or just overall health and wellness?
So for Big Y, we are part of TopGo. So we actually work with the TopGo team and giving them feedback, kind of where our interests are from a health and wellness standpoint, being on their advisory council and giving feedback that way. But even separate from branding from products, but talking about branding as in the voice of Big Y and what kind of messaging, what kind of tone, what kind of language do we want to have as a brand going forward. And our dietitian team is really involved with that because we do so much of the proofing that's coming out of each department and seeing, maybe that doesn't sound like what seafood's saying or what grocery's saying. So really being the advocates to be like, all right, what is the purpose here? What are you trying to say? And how does that fall within the Big Y voice, the Big Y brand, separate completely from products or private label?
And what's the Big Y voice?
The Big Y voice. So we're family owned and the family's still local. And the fact that we care about our community and that we're here and accessible, that's a huge point of difference between us and some of our competitors. So really keeping that at home, comfortable, here for you, we're here to support you. That tends to be the number one feedback for our customers, is that Big Y is just a friendly place to go, and it's clean and people care. And that's going to start coming through even more with our voicing, whether it's an ad, whether it's in advertisements for voiceovers or on television and radio. It just bringing it all together, because that's what we're told we're strongest in.
And April, what's Rouse's voice?
It's very similar. It's a home away from home, having that home spirit, and helping people, what are you cooking? What are you cooking tonight? And that kind of thing. And just having that friendly voice and that comfort level of that home away from home, not a super tied up environment. Having that really nice, unique thing that people want to go to, a place where people want to go. And you had asked about private labels, and ours is basically still a mix. But they always see how I take things and I run with it. We just got this, whole wheat pasta, and I'm like all excited about it. So I think, seeing the excitement behind what the dietitian is really liking, that's also fun to be able to showcase those private label products as well.
Yeah. So Carrie, I want to go back to something you said earlier about when you worked on securing the platform that helped make your virtual programs easier to execute. We get a lot of questions at RDBA about developing pitches and health and wellness strategy and all of those kinds of things. So I'd love to delve a little bit into this whole idea of, did you pitch that idea? Did someone come and ask you to put the proposal together? Can you talk us through a little bit about how you kind of manage that process to really secure the funding needed and showing the potential ROI and the potential better customer service, right, of offering that kind of platform and using that kind of platform?
Well, it was kind of twofold. And right off the bat, disclaimer, this is my counterpart's bread and butter. Okay. Like, she is definitely the all-star that championed this. So shouts out to Andrea for this, because she is an awesome data person. So being able to pull data together, whether it's, how many people were registering when we were just using another platform versus how many people showed up versus how much time the dietitians were spending to do follow-up, having her focus on that. But also, we were lucky enough to start seeing other retail dietitian teams tapping into this platform, and then this platform being presented to that Topco Advisory Council. So then other people in Big Y are hearing this and then following up with us and saying, is this a platform that we're using? Are we looking into this? So already having an internal advocate elsewhere really helps. But then also for Andrea to do the groundwork, to talk to other retailers to see, like, how is it going? How is it working for you? And then even us having preliminary meetings with them, with important people to be on those initial calls to hear what the potential is of what we could be doing, and then bringing it all together with the data that we had internally, looking outside of us and how it's being utilized from other retailers and packaging it together. That was Andrea's big win for the year. It was like, all right, so we need this because we're losing labor hours on this, and let's show you why we need this and how beautiful it will be if we bring it in. And we were so happy. We did a little happy dance, like, all right, that was awesome. Okay, next. Now we're going to start using this platform and move on and start going to focus on other areas of our team building.
And, while you're talking about Andrea kind of led that process, Carrie, were there any kind of stumbling blocks that you think would be helpful for other retail dietitians just to be aware of when trying to move an initiative like that forward?
Yeah,
and get funding?
Yeah, some stumbling blocks were kind of, the detail aspect here. Like, we want this. Is it feasible? And instead of being like, yeah, it's feasible, be like, well, let us talk to someone who's done it. What are some of the things that happen with them that we may not know otherwise, and how do we ask the right questions so that when we're presenting it, we can say, you know, they may not be here yet, but they know this is where we want to go, and at this retailer they're doing this, so we know they're getting closer. And also kind of narrowing down the data. You know, there's a lot of data we could present, but also getting feedback like that may not be relevant. How about we switch the topic of where the data is going over in this direction, because we know that the individuals in the C-suite are currently focusing on this. You know, maybe 3 weeks ago it was that, but we're going to shift really quickly. So being able to be nimble enough to do it was a great asset.
And April, do you have experience kind of having to pitch an idea like that to your management team?
Yes. So, I mean, I'm the only dietitian at Rouses, so I'm the one that has to pitch the ideas. But it's always fun, and I find that I get a really good response. But there's a big thing that Carrie said that I would have to agree with is giving them a why. You know, why do you want to do this? Why is this? And how is it going to meet the focus of the organization? What's the marketing team focusing on right now? What's their big flagship theme going on at that time? How can you relate that activity, that event, whatever it is that you're presenting to that, can really make it powerful, along with those numbers, those analytics. Even going back to whenever we were talking about chronic illnesses in the beginning, about, you know, how is this going to affect, how is this going to help customers? What percentage of customers might be dealing with this in the population? You know, so just looking at different numbers like that.
Just kind of as we come to the tail end of our webcast, you know, I'd love to get from you guys any advice you'd give to other retail dietitians in trying to make sure that your executive teams, your management teams are maintaining support of health and well-being programs, are really maintaining focus on that long-term need of shoppers for health and wellness and healthy living kind of solutions.
I think for us, especially during all of this, is really keeping that door open for feedback and sharing the feedback we get. You know, whether it's feedback on videos we've done with our local vendors before everything happened and how much they really appreciate that. So like going forward, you know, let's keep focusing on that. Whether it's feedback of we want these kinds of topics offered virtually, this is how many people are signing up and the numbers are growing. Just really showing a way to advocate for what your team's doing by showing the data that you're already collecting. And if you're not, that is pretty easy to collect. It's just a matter of adding it on your to-do list. But also for us being in the New England region, showing what our competitors are doing and showing what, you know, is new with them and saying, you know, our team is solid. We've been here for such a long time doing so much education through media and through different, you know, realms of media. Like we really can be tapping into this rather quickly and showing them like we should be here. You know, like we can be doing this. And I think that really helps because of the competitive nature in our region. It really is helpful. And then to April's point, we do use the national and even local public health statistics to show like these are our customers. We have a lot of customers with diabetes that will be diagnosed if they haven't been diagnosed, and heart disease, and we really need to help them have the tools to live the life they deserve to help prevent those diseases.
Yes, agreed. And I think also to, you know, building the relationships with all of your team members as much as you can, the category managers, the directors, your vice presidents, you know, CEO. I mean, just building that whole relationship is kind of like bricks on a house, you know, just building that up. And then that way you can get some more support for those things that you might, those ideas that you have, and those things that you want to bring forward and move forward. Working closely with your marketing team as well, you know, just making sure that that's cohesive, because we all need each other to make things successful. And then also too, I have to remind myself of this too, don't be afraid to pat yourself on the back. So if you've done something that, you know, has really shown success, you know, bring it out there, let it be known, and just to be able to get that word out and that support.
So my last question is, and April, you'll go first, and then Carrie. As a retail dietitian, what keeps you up at night? What are you worried about?
That's a really good question, Phil. You kind of caught me off guard with that one. But I think what keeps me up at night is always, as a retail dietitian, I feel that we have probably the biggest pool of things to work on and work with. So, in other words, we kind of are a jack of all trades, right? We basically focus on so many topics. So just being able to meet the needs of everybody, is something that I work towards each and every day, and I'm always trying to educate myself and trying to work towards those goals of meeting everybody, and just helping everybody. Just really want to be a help, and I think that's a lot of times why we became a dietitian too, because we want to help people. So that's it.
Carrie, what keeps you up at night?
So I think for me and people who have known what I've done personally for my personal training in the last 5-6 years has integrated into my role as a supermarket dietitian, which is to move outside of just the nutrition conversation. And I don't necessarily recommend that for dietitians that don't have that background, but for teams having more than one member and really tapping into other people's strengths. So for example, we're living well, eating smart. And so what keeps me going is the fact that we need to be focusing on living well as the eating smart. And I think for so long we tapped into eating smart, but now paying attention to the whole person, talking about mindfulness, talking about stress management, talking about compassion and empathy and how that affects your health. That is really my driver, because it's not just about the food. It's about people's relationships with their families, their communities, and with their eating habits that's going to make them long-term happy customers that are healthy and living the best life that they can live. Because food is great. We sell food, of course, but we need to address all of the situations that they're walking in every day.
And if they live longer and live better, you're going to have a customer for a longer period of time.
Absolutely. Thank you. You want to come to our meetings when we talk about
Sure.
that?
Of course. Absolutely. I'm there.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Carrie and April, for being with us today. We appreciate so much you sharing your insights with us. And we know that this is ongoing work by retail dietitians to make sure their C-suites are engaged and that management understands the power of nutrition programs. But you guys gave a lot of great insights today, and we appreciate you taking time to be here with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.